You know what your goals and expectations are and what type of editing you need, but where do you actually find an editor? Hi, hello, welcome in. I'm Jerica. I'm an editor, writer, and all-around content creator. There are so many places that you can search for your perfect editor, each with their own unique uses, pros, and cons. We're going to focus on an online search, but you could definitely meet an editor out in the wild at conferences or expos or things like that. Before we jump into where, let's talk just a little bit about how to search for an editor. In theory, you could type in something super simple like editor for hire, and you'd get results, though I'd suggest you'd get too many results. We've done all of this preparation, figuring out your goals, expectations, type of editing you need, and you're not using any of those keywords. It's going to pull up every editor, and it's going to start with the ones that paid to be there and the ones that do everything. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a bit in the category of does everything, and we're not bad editors by any means. I just think it's nice to narrow your search a bit, at least at first. Sometimes we don't find what we need, but I think starting with a narrow search and expanding from there is a more efficient way to go. It's always possible that you know your niche a bit too well, and so your search is, well, too niche. So what kind of keywords should you consider adding? This is a good time to return to the 5 questions you asked yourself before hiring an editor. The biggest keyword you'll want to add is what type of editor you're looking for. But including your genre and general length, more like short story versus novel than an actual word count, will help immensely. And here are a few examples of what your search may look like. But where are we using these keywords? Well, we're all really here for 5 places to find an editor online. Search engines. It's obvious, I know, but that's why we're gonna get it out of the way first. There's still some considerations when choosing to use a search engine, and laying that basic groundwork will help you decide if search engine is the right option for you, or if it would be better to go with one of the other options in my list. A search engine is optimized for keyword use. On the other end, people who create websites use search engine optimization to increase their findability. So in theory, from the searching side of things, you should get great results if you use the right keywords. There is the downside of having to wade through sponsored results, which aren't always as perfect a match as the true results are. Another downside of using a search engine is that you will have to click through to make sure that the specifics are actually what you're looking for. Most of the important information will not show up on the initial search page. But if they've done a good enough job on the meta description, then you might be able to figure out which ones are worth clicking on. No matter what avenue you choose, you will have to do a little extra work to make sure that an editor is right for you. So it's really not a specific downside of search engines. Some of the other options will just make this information a little bit more readily available. Social media sites. Everyone and their cat, or maybe even more likely their cat nowadays, is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and or Blue Sky. This includes professionals advertising their services. This option is a bit less obvious than using something like Google, but it can be a powerful search tool, especially depending on the needs of you as an author. While the search function isn't optimized in quite the same way, you do have the added benefit of hashtags, which allow people to categorize their own posts in a similar way. Skimming hashtag freelance editor or hashtag hire an editor can help you find posts that say exactly what kind of editing an editor offers. This stops you from having to click through and do a lot of extra reading. Unfortunately, video and photo editing also exist, and it's not always super easy for us to split these things up with these hashtags. Unless I'm missing a hashtag, which in that case, please let me know what hashtags editors are using, like word literary editors. However, if you look up editing services alongside writing community, you'll probably have a better time finding literary editors. Something that makes social media really special is that you can get a really good feel for the personality and communication style of your prospective editor by scrolling through their feed. This might be extra important to you if you or your characters are from a marginalized group or your piece deals with sensitive topics. Taking a particularly queer story to a queerphobe can be a really bad experience, and social media can sometimes help you avoid this. Some people are good at hiding their bigotry, but it's definitely worth a try if it's something you're worried about. And on the note of communication style, knowing how formal or casual a person interacts can be helpful if you have preferences in the tone of communication with your editor. Both value differences and communication style differences can really make or break a writer-editor relationship. Reddit. It's become a bit of a meme to add Reddit to the end of your search engine searches, but why not cut out the middleman? There are whole subreddits for hiring editors. One of the most interesting things about using Reddit to hire an editor is that part of your search process can become passive. Some subreddits allow you to make hiring posts, which means editors can scroll through those posts, and rather than you always being the one on the search, they can come to you. I do suggest you don't rely entirely on the passive part of this search, but we live in a very busy world, and this can take some of the time spent toll off of you. In addition to your hiring post, you can then scroll through all of the for hire posts. In both types of those posts, keywords will still be really important. Definitely put as much information of your piece in as you can, including content, genre, length, and style, and also be sure to put in your goals or the type of editing you're looking for. And while you're searching, you can still use those keywords, whether in the search bar or with Control F, to find the best for hire options for you. The biggest struggle here will be wading through the slop. Since anyone can post, not all of the posters will be quality editors. That means there are scammers, trolls, and people just not taking it very seriously, so proceed with caution, be aware of sketchy people, and don't feel too bad if you get ghosted. It's not you, it's them. Look for high-quality posts with an abundance of information about their services and credibility. Marketplaces. Think Fiverr and Upwork, but also editor-specific places like Reedsy. The pros and cons of marketplaces are kind of dependent on the marketplace itself, ranging from marketplaces which allow anyone to post like Fiverr, which means they definitely have a problem with scams and inexperienced people, all the way to Reedsy, who vets everyone that's in their directory, which means that you're definitely going to get a higher level of experience, but that level of experience does often make it less budget friendly. Personally, I would rather pay more for a job well done than risk a low quality job, but finances are personal and they're a difficult hurdle to overcome, so I understand needing budget-friendly options. Upwork sits kind of in the middle because it has this odd pay-to-win feel, which is meant to protect the employers, so you, from scams, because the employees, the editors, need to invest in the job postings. I'm not a huge fan of this model, but to each their own. The upside to using marketplaces is that they're curated databases of professionals who are actively searching for work. However, there is the caveat of whether or not the marketplace vets their posters. Buyer beware, as they say, but that's really the case with any of these options. Editing associations. Where better to look than an official association of editors? Generally, these editors have to pay a membership fee to be a part of the database, which makes it far more likely that they're serious about their services, despite the fact that these associations generally don't vet the skills of their members. However, these memberships often come with perks like continued education and access to mentorship and certifications. Many take advantage of this, so the caliber of editor that you will find in these databases is generally much higher than Fiverr or Upwork. Checking their profiles for the aforementioned certifications or other similar qualifications is one way to narrow down your search, But I'd suggest that a lack of these certifications doesn't necessarily mean a lack of experience or skill. For instance, I've received formal education, but I have yet to take the Editors Canada Essentials certification. I've poked around both Editors Canada and ACE's databases, and both provide the opportunity for searches and filters as well as profiles of the editors. These profiles can be quite robust and hold a lot of information about the services and the editor, but it is up to the editor to fill them out, so some have more or less information. I liked Editors Canada's search better, but they were both user-friendly, with keyword searches and filters available. This might be the most palatable search option, but that may come at a price. Since these databases are filled with professionals, generally with more experience and skill than those found in marketplaces or on Reddit, they come at a premium, which they deserve, by the way. So if budget is a concern, this might not be the option for you. But I say take a peek anyway. Ask your friends for referrals. I told you that you'd hear me say it at least one more time. This is an underused and underappreciated search option. You have writer friends. Have they used an editor? Why not consider going to them? Skip the overwhelming search and go straight to the source. Obviously, if your writing is vastly different from all of your writer friends, this may not work, but it is worth a try. You know this editor is reliable, and you can get the lowdown on how they work before even reaching out. A lot of the guesswork is squashed with this option, and perhaps the editor is booked or isn't quite right for you. Guess who else has friends in the same field as them? The editor! See if the editor has someone they can refer you to that is either a better match or simply has a more appropriate time slot for you. Finding an editor is not the final step. There are a few more considerations before hiring them, so stay tuned for 5 questions to ask your editor before you hire them. The blog post is up if you're champing at the bit to continue your preparation in hiring an editor, or hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified when the next video in this series goes up. Or maybe it's already there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun and are feeling ready in your search for an editor. I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye! Especially oh guys, please don't fight right here. Hi Canby. Welcome to the party. Something that makes social media really special is that you can get an idea and what your goals of the Reddit. Nope.